John Wayne Mullins, Mr. New Dad, alongside Ben Kaloy. He is the dad coach. We talk everything about the challenges of being a dad, how to overcome them, what it means, new policies that are coming in place, new practices, sharing best practices. Essentially, we talk about everything that goes on in the minds of a dad. I'm a new dad. I have a 22-month-old, and Ben is a little bit further down the road than me, but he also has 3 children. But thanks for being here. I just want to introduce Ben and just say thank you for willing to do this conversation with me today.
I always love talking father with you, John. It's almost like a liability for both of us because we often love talking about it almost so much that it often gets in the way of actually producing work, of actually creating things in business.
Right. So Ben and I had this. Ben and I are both going through the Center for Parental Leave Leadership coaching certification. It's called Retain. And we've been in this course we're finishing up the course. I believe this is our last week, and then we take the exam next month or this month. But him and I have been going through this course together alongside a few other people, and it's based on the book, The Parental Leave Playbook by Dr. Amy Beacom. And it has certainly opened up our eyes and awareness to the challenges that not just new parents face, but then also their employer and their organization or their supervisor. So there's challenges there. And being inside the military, I'm a reserve officer in the Coast Guard. I've been in for 23 years. And then Ben is a Marine Corps veteran as well. And he is the founder of, he has spoken to many dads on his podcast, the dad coach, or no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben. Tell them a plug in for your podcast.
First podcast is Military Veteran Dad, over 350 episodes related with fatherhood from dads just like you and I in military, post, veteran, active, reserve, all different flavors. And then also a lot of solo, and then also a daily podcast called The Business of Fatherhood.
Yes. So if you haven't checked those out, I certainly recommend that you check them out. But as we've been going through this course, we've been talking about, what, like the what, the how, why is this important? And then as we were in the middle of this, new DoD policy came out for the new parental leave program. And we're going to be talking about that. But being inside the military myself, being a former chief, we started having this conversation of what does this mean for the military supervisor? What does this mean for, the unit commander, and the challenges that he or she is going to face? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today is what does this new policy really mean? And what does success really look like? And so we're going to be talking about that today. So, Ben, what do you, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing the link in the chat so everyone is aware of it? But what this new policy is, it came out January 5th, effectively the 1st. But what it means is now mom and dad get 12 weeks of parental leave on top of their convalescent leave that they take. And so before this policy was enacted, dads got 3 weeks, and that was it. And then moms got they got their convalescent leave, which I believe was 42 days, and then that was it. And so we're not really going to be talking about. We just wanted to share like what this means and what the policies are and the challenges that obviously a lot of organizational leaders are facing, but we wanted to bring this conversation to you all who may be in that position, or you're a chief, or you're an E-7 and above, or you're a lieutenant and you're trying to figure out, hey, how do I navigate this? And how am I going to allow somebody to leave for 12 weeks on top of their convalescent leave so they could be gone for as long as 18 weeks? What does that mean? And how do what should you be expecting that? And so we want to talk about that today. And so, Ben, I wanted to ask you, it's like, if we could kick the tire around this topic of what does success look like for this new policy? What do you think about that?
When I think about what success looks like for this policy, I think of some Navy SEAL terminology that I learned a couple of years back of the desired end state. Where do we need to be at the end to consider this mission a success? Now, many
Right.
DoD policies are passed down and they often have a black and white flavor to them and they just need to be implemented. This was one that, yes, still does need to be implemented, but it has more of a human side that's often not shown in many of the policies that DoD has to put out or is enforcing. And this one is touching families outside of even the military unit where most military commanders have the most influence. This policy is in the family area, which often can feel like an area for most are hands off. Is one is it's home life. We don't get involved in home life, so we stay here. But at the
Right.
same time, like that also doesn't implement this policy. And you have to find a place in the gray area. And when I think about what's missing for military dads, and whether it be active reservists or even in the veteran world, the one thing that most of them miss is permission to be dad. We
Right.
often have to hold on to this title of being in the military, that we have to do this burden of service that we've signed up for, and that these things that we want, which is a family and to be connected with our kids, like that's not something we get to have.
No.
And John and I were talking prior to this, preparing for it. And one thing that we really wanted to highlight is while this may seem like a Pandora's box for anyone E-7 and above of how to implement, how to manage resources, how to manage people on boats. I mean, when we started conceptualizing what it would be like for a whole bunch of dads on a boat to be potentially on parental leave and how do you manage that? It was like, wow, this can be a really overwhelming policy.
Sure.
But again, the desired end state is connected to this experience of welcoming in either your firstborn or every time you have another kid. And
Right.
connection doesn't have to be in a 12-week sequence. That was the kind of the big hierarchy thing that we kind of came up with was this isn't something that, like for a mom, would be 12 weeks of let's keep this baby alive while it can't go to daycare because it's too young. This is something that gives a different leverage of 12 weeks doesn't have to be sequential, that you can
Right.
actually foster and design different framework to set up connection, to have that be the end state and to have a dad be connected to this experience and not have it one where it's this 12-week burden of that the service has or the unit has to figure out how to replace you for 12 weeks. There's
Right.
a conversation that can be had to fill that gap.
Absolutely, Ben. And I like what you said there is that what this policy does is that it's designed to really hardwire that connection into every kid's life, and really start to cement it, like you said earlier. And otherwise, it's hard to really do that in 3 weeks. And I think it's pretty obvious we have seen as a culture and as a society the lack of fatherhood, the lack of fatherlessness and connection and our family, to our kids, is gone. And so for the military to take such a strong progressive approach to saying, hey, we're going to start you know helping out our dads more and being for them, and this policy is really designed to help them, to equip to help them uh, make that connection with their new son or daughter.
And I want to highlight something that I think may have been overlooked, or if you haven't noticed, this is kind of all connected. Is all the military branches have this new goal to make family matter,
Right.
that you can have a life and be in the military at the same time, that there's this new rebranding. And it's not rebranding, it's just kind of a shifting of priorities of what people have permission to say yes to. And we're also then looking at how we get people to stay in the military, when a lot of feedback for people getting out of the military comes down to I didn't feel supported as a dad, as a family, and my family was suffering because, or the
Sure.
quality of my dad experience was suffering because of where I did, what I was serving with. They'll get out because of that. This moment, this one single 12-week connection exercise that you have an opportunity as an E-7 and above to engineer in a way that fosters a deeper connection, you have an opportunity to put a ripple in this military member's life that trickles through their service that says, you know what, I felt really supported when I brought my baby into this world. And you know what, I can feel like I can do it again. Or maybe I feel like I can actually make it to 20 years. But oftentimes, because this initial connection was robbed, because it's almost lackluster because of how it was done in the past, there's never this really cemented feeling of what it could do at the end, or what this could do to foster a longer term or a longer enlistment for different people. And it comes down to this single moment. I mean, think of what was the likelihood, I don't know the statistic, but I'm sure it's not pretty, of how many dads that missed the birth of their kids and missed the first year of their kids' lives. What is the likelihood that they stay? It's probably pretty low. What DoD has done here is they've given a framework, they've given a process to facilitate a massive connection to the most important moment in a dad's life, and the idea of becoming a dad, or when you welcome more kids to your family. That feeling, this framework that DoD puts out, and the link that I put in the chat, is not just this burden. It's not just a policy. It's not just this, oh my God, you know how many meetings this is going to take to solve? Well, those are all true feelings. Yeah. This is a framework to create and solve a bunch of different problems that are all connected. And it comes down to connection. Like, that's what I really want to highlight for different people watching this recording.
Right.
Connection is this feeling that we need to engineer into it.
Well, and so I think they were pretty strategic in the way they designed this, because like you said, it's establishing that connection at home that they're not getting. And by allowing that service member, by allowing that dad to take that, they have 1 year to take those 12 weeks. Now, those 12 weeks don't have to be sequential. You could, if you're that E-7 or above, or you're that lieutenant and you're trying to figure out, hey, what is the best way for you to take? When are the critical moments that you need to be at home? Is it at month 1, month 4, month 6, month 12, whatever it may be? You have those. And so you can space those out. And so now, if you're learning how to coach that new dad in that time, you can help him to make the best decision. So he can feel empowered. He can be at home. He cannot miss those moments. But at the same time, you're not freaking out because he's going to be gone for 3 months or more. So I think that this framework, even though it's not spelled out completely, there is a great way that if you can learn how to use some of these resources that Ben and I are talking about, and learning how to ask these better questions, it can really establish that connection for the new dad. However, we were talking about this before we came on today, is the ripple effect that it could have on that service member's career. And again, what it says about, hey, you know what? The military gave me 12 weeks and I was able to take a month off 3 times in my first year. I was able to be there for my wife. I was able to be there for my kid. All these separate things that you're now missing, you're not missing, and you're able to be a part of. And so I think this new policy is going to do wonders, but it's really going to take some strategy, and really going to take you as that supervisor, as that leader, to help facilitate those conversations that dad doesn't know that he needs to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I also want to highlight, there was a strategic importance of why we picked E7 and above.
Right.
We didn't go in the O category. We specifically targeted E7 and above, because you guys listening to this are the best primed to solve this problem, to actually feel the stress of what you're at the boots on the ground that are going to feel what this feels like, implementing it across a motor T shop or an engineering battalion or a comms battalion. You are the ones that are going to be feeling it. You're going to be the ones talking to these dads, trying to process and balance everything, and not feeling like you are supported. The idea that we're trying to illuminate here is there is a framework for this. John and I have gone through the certification for parental leave. There is a whole process through it.
Right.
But what we want to illuminate here is that you guys are primed to be the people in front of these dads, to make life-altering connection possible for these dads and create lifelong members of the military. that they don't
100%.
want to leave. And so you have this unique opportunity being there in these moments to watch it, to be there, and to facilitate it. And one of the things that John and I both do is coach. But we also then talked that coaching is one of the underserved resources in the military, that one of the only branches that we know of utilizing it is the Air Force. But coaching is a way to facilitate these ideas, to facilitate what a dad truly wants, to facilitate a conversation that leads to a desired end state. Because let's be honest, when I became a new dad, I didn't know what the hell I wanted. I didn't know what was right and wrong.
Right.
So there is a component of coaching that is this flashlight effect that I often call it, that you are the person guiding, pointing, and asking the right questions. You aren't the person with all the answers. You're just a person that can facilitate a container that allows this dad to understand what success looks like.
Right.
And that is the framework that John and I are both specialized in. And that's the offer here available at the bottom of this screen is if you would like to host a workshop for your enlisted E-7 and above, or anybody around that exception through the military units as they go out and fall in there, head on over to bencloy.com/leave. I'll put a link in the chat for it as well. But there is a simple form to fill out, and we are more than willing to step in and host a conversation and a workshop on what it's like to coach dads through this, because this problem isn't going away, and connection is what they want. And from our perspective, coaching is the only way as a manager or as an enlisted person in charge of anyone under your care.
Right.
Coaching is the process to solve this. There's no way you can DOD policy, MAR admin, or create some blanket handbook that's going to solve this. This is a human element, and it requires human solutions. Right. And coaching is that vehicle to do it. It's just not something that's standard implemented across the DoD. They should have started with coaching as a standard across DoD and then moved up parental leave. But because they didn't, we're on the back end trying to show that coaching is this tool to get there.
Yes, 100%. I want to kind of go back and talk about again why we selected the E-7s, and you know the former chief in me is feeling very prideful right now because you are, you know, this is what deck plate leadership is about. You're aware of what's going on within your unit. You're aware of those challenges. You're aware of who's doing what, or, you know, so-and-so, you know, they're preparing for this. The officer corps, they're not involved with this stuff. They don't know. The enlisted, they know. I feel like they're better at leading people. They're better at leading teams. They know about the inner workings of their teams. And so you're going to be the only one who is primed to have these conversations with your team or with your new dad to help him figure out, hey, what does success look like? What does connection look like? And how can I best serve you to help me through this time? Excuse me, my son is coming up to me to say goodnight. Hi, buddy.
And if there was a better place for that to happen where real life happens, it is here on Two Dads Talking on Parental Leave.
Yep. Hey, go away. Hey, can you take it? Evan, go. I'll see ya. Have a good nap. Every day at 11:30 this happens. I love it. Anyway, so yeah, this back to what we were talking about. Deck plate leadership, these are the conversations that you're going to have. And so, like you said, coaching is that tool. And yes, I agree. Coaching has not taken root in the military. I don't know why. It's just not something that they teach. And I know so many people, they're confused with coaching and mentoring. But what if you're a chief, or what if you're an E-7 and above and you've never been through this yourself? You're not a parent. You're not going to be able to be a mentor and help that person through this season because your definition of success is completely different than his definition of success. So, you know, that's where these coaching conversations and tools will help you facilitate those conversations that dad needs to have.
And I also, there was this urgency that we originally felt when we were diving into this, is to an E-7, this policy feels extremely heavy. They're probably not even connected to the actual implementation. There's officers somewhere at headquarters figuring it out and implementing it across all of it. When we were even researching it, there was we were learning about the Manpower and Reserve Unit within DoD that wrote the policy and how those branch out to all the different military branches. And right now, even the Coast Guard is currently the only branch that has a implementation of this as it's been written from January 5th. All the other branches are waiting on other branches to figure out kind of what's going on. The Marine Corps is waiting on the Navy, and the Navy is probably figuring out how to parental leave dads on ships effectively without affecting mission readiness on the boats. And it's the E-7 that's feeling the pressure of not having this solution. Because
Right.
here's the other angle to this. A dad right now in any of the branches, whether they have a policy or not, could ask for this parental leave.
Right.
So the right is already available to every dad in the United States military.
Right.
Whether or not you as an E-7 and above have any idea of how to implement it, or even your chain of command hasn't even passed down that this is the thing that you need to manage.
Right.
But yet anybody that finds it or anybody that's been passed down this information has all right to request it. It's written right in there on the exact dates it becomes available.
Yeah.
Whether you're ready for it or not. And so the urgency here has never been higher for why E-7 and above was our tar rank, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where you're going to get the juice out of the squeeze. And right now, you don't have the resources to be successful.
Right. No, you don't. And so I think as E-7 and above, you have to learn how to ask these questions, because I've already reached out to a number of my colleagues and the people who are active duty, E-7 and above right now. And I asked them for some feedback. I'm like, hey, what is your biggest concern right now? And all of them said, our biggest concern right now is how we're going to fill that gap while they're gone. That's the pain point that they are already feeling, and they're not even doing it yet. And so the focus is on that gap time frame. But then what about, obviously, I think they're thinking, oh, they're going to be gone for 3 months. What am I going to do? Well, they're not thinking about, hey, you can space this out. There are different ways that you can offset that. But using some of these questions and this framework that you and I have been learning through CPLL and showing, hey, it doesn't have to be this painful, but here are some tools that's going to help you and help your team and help that new dad through that challenging season. And so, again, Ben and I would love to be able to come in, and we want to share this with more military leaders, because we know that you are going to feel this, and this isn't going away. But I feel like if you're proactive, you're going to help yourself, help your unit, and help your command so much further, because you're already instituting these questions, this framework that's ultimately it's going to help you, but then it's also going to help that dad that you and your organization is trying to retain. I mean, there's no pun intended it's the coaching program's called Retain for a purpose. But that's the challenge, because what we've learned through this program is if a mom or a dad doesn't feel like they're supported as they're going through this transition, becoming working parents and having a family, if they don't feel supported, they leave. And so, what is that costing your organization? A lot. How, the ripple effect. What's the ripple effect by not creating that support that you can provide for them? It's already there. You just need to make a few little changes, ask better questions, and then institute some of those changes, because it's going to be different again for everybody. But who's really going to feel this is you, and this framework is designed, like, I geek out about it, because it's like, wow, when I first became a chief, I'll never forget it, but I had 3 pregnant women in my first year. And I was just like, wow, how do I do this? How do I help them? And I had to learn how. We made it work. But having a program like this, oh my gosh, it certainly would have made my life so much better. Probably would have worked a lot less hours too, during that season. So it's really great. Ben, anything else you want to add?
I wanted to share an analogy that I already shared with you a little bit ago, offline, about what the Marine Corps does and how we train. And it's this idea that the Marine Corps literally goes all around the world to train against our weaknesses, that we go to our allies and we train at the edge of our skill sets. So that way we can move beyond what was our weakness and move it from a liability to an asset. and we are comfortable going into places where we don't always know the solution. The irony that I've now realized on the outside of the military, looking backwards on this idea of military veteran dad, is that that's the one skill set that actually could change everything within this category, is go to the edge of uncomfortableness. Is it uneasy talking to a dad about emotions and feelings? Absolutely. Does it allow you to move your liabilities to your assets to make you a better, stronger, more emotionally intelligent leader? Absolutely. But yet this idea of vulnerability, this idea of going into areas that are unknown, the military literally does all around the world every single day. And we do it so that way we can sharpen our effectiveness. The same thing is what can work here. And so if you trust your gut when you go into the training exercises that you're going to be more effective, trust your gut here, because it's not an accident that you're trained how to train. The same thing can happen here, and it's the same exercise. It's just a place with feelings versus rifles and cannons.
I had to think about that for a second, but you're absolutely right. But the thing is, we haven't been trained to think this way, especially with these new changes and policies and what the military, what the DoD is trying to implement. Obviously, they're trying to increase retention. They're trying to increase the problem of the family unit being, completely sunken by the last 15 years, 20 years, because they've seen the lack of support for dads, what that has constituted in, divorce rates and the military and the structure. Because, we said something, you made me think about something the last time we had this discussion of, what is a man in crisis costing you in your organization? Well, when does that crisis start? And oftentimes, if they don't have that connection, or if we're not empowering them to build that connection in that first year of being a dad, what does that result in? Or, year 1, year 2, year 3. That's just at their family life and their role as dad. But then also, what does it result in their career? How does it make them feel that, hey, they weren't supported by their unit commanders or their chiefs or by the military that they've so proudly served for 15, 20 years? What does it do to them? It probably makes them pretty salty and pretty grumpy. They probably aren't going to stick around. So by doing this, it kind of changes that dynamic and saying, hey, families are important. We want to empower you. We want to help you think bigger and better and help you, have a family. So if or when you do have a family, you're not going to be, punished or not given the ability to be a dad or the permission to be a dad. And so all of this matters right now, but we feel that a lot of this, it's just going to need opportunities for growth, opportunities to learn how to ask these questions and just listen, and then help them to develop those plans moving forward. So as they prepare to take their leave, while they're on leave, and then when they return to work, they have this framework that's already established. And that's kind of like the cream of the crop with this program that we've been learning through the Center for Parental Leave. And so that's what we want to share with you. And so again, if you're a chief and you want to bring this to your mess, or you want to bring this to your unit and learn how to have this conversation, that's something that we are offering today. We're just looking for those people, those units who are interested in learning how to do this. And so, Ben, back to you.
One quote that we didn't mention, but I want to highlight, because if anybody is missing why is this important, this stat comes from the Center for Parental Leave and a study that was done, and to highlight that 77% of fathers want to spend more time with their children on an average workday. This is what men and dads are craving, but the military has never created a space for that feeling to exist. This policy, pushed down from DoD, is step one of allowing a dad to step into the best title ever wear, a dad. And I appreciate your conversation here today, John, as well.
Yeah. So if you're interested, Ben's going to put the form in the chat. And if this is something that you want to learn more about, feel free to hit us both up or comment or send us an email or fill this form out, and we'll be in touch with you. Because again, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. We're really wanting to bring this to your unit and help you to help that new dad. So thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, comments, want to know more, feel free to reach out. But thanks, Ben, for being here today.
Thank you, John.
All right. Take care, everyone.